Hey, this is Dennis, and welcome to another episode of the Grounded Reason podcast, where tech and policy collide. Today, we're going to get into some Nielsen numbers and see how many people are cutting the cord. We also have an article that we're going to discuss where the cable TV industry is swearing that it's competitive.
And I'm going to try not to have a stroke while we discuss it.
And then we got a whole bunch of news on the FCC getting sued and Ajit Pai playing a game of hide the data that just got FOIA requested.
Yeah, oh my God.
But first, I think that we're starting some trends. Because 2 episodes ago, we compared basically the lies and mistruths that are happening around net neutrality with the lies and mistruths that are happening around healthcare. This week, if you've been paying attention, they're calling this new approach the skinny repeal of the healthcare bill, which makes me laugh because in what we discuss all the time, the slimmed down cable bundle that really no one really wants.
Yeah, what's the other one?
That's called a skinny skinny bundle.
What's the other one? It's the no limits data plan that. But it's got these 5 limits.
Right, exactly.
Right? Like,
so it's
no limits until you hit the limit.
It's a lot of crossover right now, it seems, into like the stuff we normally discuss and then what's happening right now.
Bullshittery.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the funny is the skinny repeal we're recording this on Thursday, is basically just it's a repeal. It's a repeal. But the funny part about it is the Senate, they want to guarantee the House will not vote.
Yeah, because they're terrified.
Right, if the Senate approves the skinny repeal of the healthcare bill, they want to guarantee from the House that they won't also approve it because they don't want it to become law. So the Senate is voting on something that they don't want to be law.
No, the whole idea. This is what,
and because they wanted to get it to committee.
They want to get it to committee. They can throw it out, and then it comes back.
But this is like a new precedent because the committee. I know we're a little bit of a tangent here, but the committee used to be the House had a bill, and then the Senate took up that bill and added some changes and amendments. But the point is both sides actually passed something that they wanted to be law, and then they go to committee and. Whatever comes out whatever comes out of committee is just a straight up and down vote, and it's usually just to like, I don't like this part. Can we agree to take this out and put this in and leave this and maybe tweak these numbers here? Yeah. It's always like it's window dressing on legislation.
Yeah, because things
almost
are
over the
relatively close.
This is we don't like anything either side is doing, so we're just going to pass both our shit burgers and then sit at a table, throw them both away, and come up with something else.
You know why this is happening? So I'm going to geek out for a second.
I didn't mean to do this, but I just
so it's happening.
It's too late.
Like, so we're going to get through it together.
Remember, tech and policy collide.
Policy. There's some policy. So you've seen Doctor Strange, right?
The movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know the comics, right?
Oh, yeah. I got the first appearance of Doctor Strange.
Well, there you go.
Strange Tales number 110.
Oh, did you read it in your basement?
I did.
With a bag of Cheetos?
I did.
So Mitch McConnell is Dormammu. That's what I maintain.
Only, I think maybe 2 people out there.
Yeah, well,
that reference.
He's a demon. That's what I'm saying is Mitch McConnell's a demon because this is the worst thing.
Well, I guess in the movie, Dormammu's in the movie. He's like
He's in the movie.
Yeah, he's the guy.
It's like a big floating head in the movie.
At the end, yeah. But
yeah. So that's why this is happening, is a demon is running the Senate. I only slightly exaggerate.
But he doesn't have the demon name.
No.
Reince Priebus. No, sorry.
Oh, yeah. That name is kind of scary sounding.
It is.
I honestly think he sounds more like a low-level James Bond villain.
Oh, it could be. Like Odd Job and Reince Priebus.
Yeah, Reince Priebus, right?
All right.
It's just me.
So let's get into some, my favorite time of year, actually happens 4 times a year, The Nielsen ratings come out, and
I joked about this last time this happened.
I know.
Dennis literally, this was last time. He didn't do it this time. I'm a little surprised. But he literally texted me and was like, "Oh my God, the Nielsen numbers are here. The Nielsen numbers are here."
Like Steve Martin in The Jerk with the phone book. Yeah, but it's because it's like they actually compare like who has cable TV, who has satellite, who has some telecom version like Verizon or AT&T, and also who watches through over-the-air television and who watches over broadband.
Yeah, it's actually pretty impressive.
Right.
Like, I wasn't sure Nielsen would be, I mean, this is a few years ago when I was thinking about this, but I wasn't sure Nielsen was going to be able to, like, adjust to the new market.
It's a relatively, like, new thing for them. They've been doing it for, like, almost 3 years now, I think.
I remember, like, 10, maybe 8 years ago, like, I was, a Nielsen, like, survey or whatever.
You were a Nielsen family.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And I was living, I was single. I was 26. God, so, I must have been. That's 14 years ago. Good Lord.
Yeah, when I was a little tiny kid, I used to think that it was like your last name was Nielsen.
Yeah, well, it was. Does that help you?
No.
if I say my name was, I changed
it. So I was right.
They sent me exactly. So I filled out the survey, right? And, like literally with like a pencil and, on paper and mailed it back. And they mailed me 5 not so crisp dollar bills.
Oh, yeah. They pay you.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think you misunderstand. I thought that they only did that to people named Nielsen.
That's equally absurd, right?
Well, no, I thought it was like that was like their survey mechanism.
So Leslie Nielsen,
like we're randomly going to grab, like instead of like random, they're going to say we're just going to get anybody with the last name Nielsen, and that's who our sample will be.
Well, at least you had like a mindset of like statistically that would be fairly significant.
Well, that was
right?
that's what it was. I was like,
although you would probably only grab one ethnicity if you did that, or like
I wasn't thinking that deep. I was just like, that must be how they pick like the random people, because I know that's not random, but when I was like 7, that's what I thought random meant. It seemed random to me.
Yeah, sure.
So, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that was it. I mean, like I actually did the old school survey, so I just wasn't sure they would be able to like shift gears as dramatically as they have, but they do some amazing work.
Oh yeah, they do some really good work, because like I really only go on over the raw numbers, but they actually do. If you look at it's called the total audience report, and you can get it from their website. They break down like how much people watch each device, and through demographics, like they'll go through like the boomers, the greatest generation, X, millennials, and whatever they're calling millennial kids. I think I think it's Z.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Right now, I don't know. That'll change probably.
Yeah.
But they'll actually go and they'll say, this generation, the millennials watch, this much live TV or DVR TV, and or they listen to the radio this much, and they really break it down.
That was what impressed me, is that they've gotten to where their market segmentation is actually really sophisticated.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's usually. I mean, I only go over maybe 3 pages of the report, but it's like a 30-page report of various like demographics and age groups and all the different mechanisms that they consume media over. So it's pretty impressive. Well, anyway, so the raw numbers here, and this compares the first quarter of 17 to the first quarter of 16.
Yep.
So the amount of people that watched TV over the air and over streaming only, so no pay TV, went from 7.3 million in first quarter 16 to 8.97. So actually 9 million in the first quarter of 17. So that there was like
1.67.
Yeah. So crazy boost there in people watching over the air and streaming. People who just watch over the air went from 6 million to 6.2 and some change. So, 200,000 people.
Yeah.
Like, and that number though has been fairly steady,
Right.
and that's rare. That's usually going to be people who are rural or, in more impoverished areas where they're not going to
Right.
be able to get a pay TV or internet connection for the most part.
But that first shift, that was within a quarter.
Oh no! It's I'm comparing quarter to quarter here.
So it's within a
It's
year.
year over year,
It's
but
year over year.
the first quarter.
So that's 23%. Like the first shift you talked about, what was that? That was which group?
That was OTA and streaming.
Okay, so OTA and streaming increased by 23% in a year.
Yeah, it went up. It went up a ton in a year.
That's insane.
Yeah. So just broadband, and that means no OTA, went from 3.9 million to 5.4 million.
Good Lord.
All in all, the total non-pay TV went from 17.2 to 20.6 million.
Wow. That is a huge
In a
jump.
year. In a year. I mean, it's been a lot of this is the past 2 quarters were that's a lot of people fled pay TV. And also there was like a big uptake in households too in the past year, it seems. Like, I think it was like 1.5 million households in the US that increased over the past year.
So what did we say typically? Like a person who's paying for a normal cable package and then shifts gears and goes to cord cutting saves what, $60 a month?
I mean, at minimum, it depends what you do. I mean, when we first did it, we were saving about $100 a month.
So going from say 180 to 80 is what you're saying.
Yeah, roughly is about. Actually, that's actually about. Well, I really did it on the cheap too.
Let's just call it cut it in half.
Yeah.
Right, cut it in half.
You'll save at least $60, I think.
If you think about that from like their cost structure perspective, meaning the ISP's cost structure perspective, like they are maintaining the same personnel, infrastructure, back office staff, etc. So let's say there's 2 portions that generates revenue
right
off their overall cost structure.
Yeah, their video and their internet for the most part.
Exactly.
Phone here and there.
So the content and the actual connection to the internet.
Right.
Right. So if that gets cut in half for every person that, is cutting a cord, and people are cutting a cord at that kind of rate, that's a huge hit to their bottom line.
Yeah.
Like think of it as I think we saw let's just make an easy number, right? Let's say they had 100 million subscribers.
Oh, I haven't told you their numbers.
So Dennis has real numbers.
I do.
I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, like if real quick, because it's just one stat.
Let's do it.
Pay TV, and that includes telecom, which is your AT&T, Verizon, types, satellite, and cable, went from first quarter of 2016, they had 99.23 million.
Mm-hmm.
First quarter 17, 97.8 million.
Oh boy, that is worse than I thought.
It's like a 1.5 million.
1.43.
Right.
So, and I mean that the difference between that 0.5 and 0.43 is 70,000. So in a number that big, it does matter. But like, I mean, think about that. That's like almost 1.5 million people.
Right. And I mean, on the other end, it looks like it was close to 3 million on the uptake.
Good Lord.
Or more, actually. Which, because of all those households that joined.
Sure.
And didn't pick up. That's the thing.
You got new entrants.
They're getting hit on both fronts.
Yeah. Because think about it as like they've got to sign up new customers all the time.
Right.
To when they do their projections for building out the network, they think about like, what they're going to be drawing down as revenue. So that means like if people are coming in and at an increasing rate, more and more people aren't getting the total bundle of services. They're only getting half of it,
Mhm.
right? Like from a revenue perspective. That means they've got to radically change their cost structure,
Right.
right? And this is the kind of market, Dennis, and I'm telling you, like there are studies about this stuff that is rife for new entrants. Like someone's going to come along and be the company that just supplies internet connection,
Right.
and that's it. And they are like, we're going to keep our costs as lean and mean as possible, and we're going to get you to the internet fast.
Yeah, and I
that's
think
all we do.
I think, and actually, that's one of the big reasons I'm a supporter of Title II.
Yeah,
is because it gets to a situation where the infrastructure is just the infrastructure, and you have to supply.
yeah, it becomes a utility.
Yeah, and then any new entrant can come in, and as long as they can keep the costs low, use that existing infrastructure to supply internet.
Yeah, and basically the innovation in those cases, when you start talking about a utility and where most of a utility's innovation comes from, it's on the business model innovation.
Yes.
Right? Like, so they have to push for internal efficiencies because what they're charging is a commodity good, right?
Which
Like,
it is. I mean, yeah.
it's a connection to the internet. And I'm sorry, this is getting like really wonky, so I hope I'm not boring you guys.
No.
But
I mean, but it's,
I could listen to this data all night.
well, the number, like I did the percentages on this, and this means that the amount of people who are not utilizing a traditional pay TV service went from 14.8 in the first quarter of 16% to 17.4%.
I was gonna say it has to be right about that.
That's a huge jump.
That's it. I mean, that's a country size worth of people.
It really is. Like a small country, but a country nonetheless.
Not that small of a country.
Was it like 3 million? Yeah, it was a 3 million jump. Yeah, 3 million people jump in non-pay TV users.
Yeah.
More than that, actually, like 3.4.
Okay, so medium-sized Scandinavian country.
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
Luxembourgish, maybe.
Yeah, certainly Luxembourg. I mean, come on. Let's be serious, Dennis.
Okay, so those are the cord cutting numbers. I know a lot of people are just interested in basically where we are. People like stats especially like cord cutting. You feel like you're a bit of a team. How many people are out there doing it?
Yeah,
lots of people are doing it.
It's still going in that direction.
It's actually it's ramping up. I thought we ramped up last year. This year is like a whole new ballgame.
Well, and I think what's really killing them from the stats you're reading out is the new entrants, like the people who are coming in, and just never going.
New households are not seeing value in pay TV. They're just not.
So I mean, if you think of it, and so I'm gonna point this out. I'm making these numbers up, okay? But if it was something like 1 out of every 5 existing customers started to cut over, that's painful, right? Mm-hmm. But if it's 3 out of every 5 new potential customers,
right,
goes no thanks,
right,
that's a killer.
Yeah, because that's your future, and at that point, it's just
how do you even plan for that?
You got to do things like what AT&T is doing. And I mean, look, I am not a big fan of some of the shenanigans they pull at AT&T, but they have the foresight out of all of the big TV providers, they're the ones that are like, all right, I want to throw an over the top TV service out there, and who cares if it cannibalizes my business? At least I have a bet in the future.
Sooner or later, the guy who wrote Liar's Poker and Moneyball and all of those. Yeah. I forget his name offhand. Sooner or later, someone like him is going to come along. This is a few years from now, and write a book about the ISP wars because it's getting ready to start.
Oh, it'll be.
It's going to be really.
It'll be like the Pirates of Silicon Valley type movie. That'll happen. There's too much. It's such an intriguing story when you kind of look at it from
Yep.
like the companies that have just been sitting on their laurels
Yep.
for so long and just collecting cash because they kind of cornered the market.
I honestly think AT&T, I mean, we've said this a bunch of times, that AT&T is very well positioned
They are.
to take a lot of Comcast's lunch money.
Yep. And
That's what's gonna happen.
Verizon right now is actually in talks with Charter to make a deal.
And I think
which we kind of called.
We absolutely and I don't normally
like a year ago.
I don't normally get on the bandwagon for when you say things like we kind of call. We absolutely did call that one.
Yeah.
Because Verizon has, I mean, like we're on the East Coast, so their wireless service is very good on the East Coast.
Actually, they have good national coverage, but I think like the Verizon Fios is only available in Middle Atlantic up to like parts of Connecticut.
Well, when the Baby Bells got split up,
Right.
Verizon came out of Mid Atlantic and Northeast, right. Like so, that's why their coverage is best here, even though it's good everywhere,
right,
in the continental United States, and but yeah, Fios, like we have Fios in our area, and it's fantastic. I mean, like, as far as getting to the internet, I really have no complaints.
I think I've like had one service call in 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know that I've had any.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was a tweet. That was a tweet. It was because it was Thanksgiving.
Oh, you told me about that.
Yeah, I tweeted in anger, like at Verizon, and I was
don't
like,
tweet angry, man.
I did because like, I had to write. I think I actually might have talked about this on the podcast once.
You might have, but
because I had to get an article written for the next day for the blog, and I get home because it was Thanksgiving. We were at the in-laws. I got home and the internet was down, and like the way their service works, like their support just wasn't open Thanksgiving. Like I got immediately like kicked into a queue and just rang and rang.
Yeah.
So I was like tweeting in anger. Instantly they reply. They're like, "Whoa, what's the problem?" And then they say like DM me, which is like direct message if you're not on Twitter.
Yep.
Direct message me your like router number. So
and they flushed your router.
They did, and I fixed it like over Twitter. So
they actually,
word of the wise, shame a big company over Twitter, and you'll get better support.
Man, I think it was Consumerist, which is a blog that I've mentioned before, but I think it was them who basically said that a few years ago. This is like 3 or 4 years ago. That like a couple of these like really large conglomerates, particularly like the Verizons, and I think it was Verizon, maybe AT&T,
Right.
Like you get on Twitter and all of a sudden they're responsive.
Yeah, and this was before like the blog was big, so I didn't have like I mean, like right now I only have like a couple thousand followers, if that. But like I got to like maybe 2.7. I hate the word followers; it's ridiculous.
People who read the blog,
people who liked stuff I said on Twitter is probably better.
Twitter.
But like, I don't know. It's like just followers. It's like I don't know.
Yeah, you're not a cult.
How many disciples?
Right?
Do you have?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But
they're not disciples. They're people who read what you write on Twitter.
Exactly. I don't know. The term always irks me when I say it.
Yeah.
But I only probably had like maybe a couple hundred at the time, so it's not like you even need like a big following for them to respond.
Man, they have those queued up, right? Like because you can set like little alerts on any search you want. So they just got someone minding their social media accounts, like looking for hashtag Verizon.
And these days, like you can get access to an API, which basically says search for any of these keywords and hit me, when like those come up.
Fios or Verizon,
exactly,
and whatever. Well, so anyways, like Verizon's really well positioned, and you had some thoughts. You were telling me about why.
I think they're picking up Charter essentially to build a nationwide wireline build out, because then they can get wireline. They can get to the internet over wireline anywhere in the nation, and they want there's synergies there as well for Charter. I don't think this is going to be a straight buyout.
Right? Yeah.
You know, because like it's really, I think it's beneficial to both in that Charter is going to get existing video business nationwide, which they currently don't have. They
Right.
have it just in this part of the country. Charter is going to get like the 5G play, which they
Right.
don't have at all right now. So I'm curious though how this is going to be affected by the deal with Comcast that they're supposed to. Charter and Comcast basically said that we're not going to compete with each other when it comes to mergers and acquisitions. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. We'll see, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, like,
This is all conjecture and rumor too.
The attorneys will get in a room and hash that out.
So, well, I mean, we'll see. Okay, so now I'm going to get into a series of articles, or like a series of topics, which really are just like kind of like a load of horse manure.
A series of tubes.
Yeah, a series of horse manure. But first off, the NCTA, which used to be like the National Cable and Telecom Association.
Yeah, and they rebranded it to something.
But they're still NCTA. I still don't understand this. Their acronym is still NCTA, but now they're like the, internet and
Happy Fun Time
exactly internet and television
company,
people.
Right, yeah.
Well, they're really just like the major trade organization for your larger video providers and ISPs. They released a report that said that 88% of everyone out there, everyone in the United States, has access to 2 or more ISPs.
Yeah, this one is the one I told you that made me angry. Surprise, surprise, I got angry about something you sent me. But it's
we
one of
could
these...
call this "Let's Make Joel Angry."
Yeah,
like
it
this
really
podcast.
is. It's like a game.
Yeah.
Ding! How angry can you make Joel? Oh, look, his ears have turned red.
Well, that needed to be more like a video podcast.
Yeah,
but,
that's
it
true.
doesn't.
But it's it doesn't work if you describe it. But anyways, this is clearly. I mean, as soon as you sent this to me, I mean, like I walked in, basically was like, so are they counting like, all of the DSL lines as providers in the area?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. They're basically the 88% figure. They pulled it, and here's the thing: it's like it's lazy. They pulled it from like a December 2014 report by the U.S. Department of Commerce, which used a definition of broadband, which I think it was at 3 MIPS at the time.
Yeah.
So they used a standard 3 years ago to come up with this 88%.
Yeah, which
number.
is, I mean, honestly, 3 MIPS is like basically useless.
Well,
right?
in this day and age, it's if you want to like do anything outside of surf the web,
Right.
yes.
Right.
Like even if you want to use some more like robust websites these days,
Yeah, you'd have a hard time because like websites automatically
use a lot of video now.
Yeah, I was about
Right.
to say they load video almost immediately
Right.
when you go to them.
I mean, in my in-laws, they cut the cord on 3 MIPS, so it's possible.
But it's not easy.
Oh, it's not, and you have to deal with like pixelation here and there.
Well, even if you're still like hooked into cable, right? Like,
but they upgraded. They only dealt with that. For a
I
while.
remember you saying
Right.
like
So,
it.
but I mean, it's just the thing that gets me is this is just disingenuous.
Yeah.
Because they're pulling in technology. If you're going to make a statement today, you don't go and pull data from 3 years ago.
Well, you also don't take things like a, FiOS or, God forbid, like Google Fiber, or et cetera, which is like a Ferrari, and compare it to like my 2004 Civic, right? Which is what DSL is, right? Like they're just not the same thing, right? Like with DSL, you can get to the internet, like Dennis said, and poke around.
Right.
But that's about what you can do.
Yeah. Well, the funny part about it is they said stuff like that this like the 3 MIPS is the approximate definition of basic broadband download speeds. So they use like safe words.
Yeah.
Like approximate. and alleged. It's like they
Although-
might as well have said like it's allegedly broadband.
I thought you were. I thought you were saying something else with safe word. So
Oh, no.
that I thought it got really blue really quick. But yeah, so it is absolutely disingenuous. Like I don't understand how no one calls them out on it.
Well, no, they did. Ars Technica. I'm pulling a lot of this out of an Ars Technica article where they pretty much said, "Hey, the definition of broadband was updated to 25 MIPS."
Yeah,
and as a matter of fact,
it's a gigantic difference.
And there was a push to make it 10 MIPS at the time from people in the telecom industry.
Yeah,
and that wouldn't have so even by their definition that they wanted, this doesn't hold water.
The 3.3 times what they're calling
it. I mean, if you really want to take the 25 MIP standard, or megabytes per second, megabits per second, excuse me, then only roughly 23% of the country actually has access to 2 or more providers for broadband,
and that's more or less what I would have guessed.
Yeah.
That's your very large metropolitan areas.
For the most part. And even then, I mean, in those areas, there are pockets where cities have cut sweetheart deals with one provider and they don't have access. There's only something like 23 million households that actually have a real choice between providers, which is sad. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Here we have 2.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like that honestly seems kind of like what I would have thought. I mean, if you think about it, like you're talking only a handful of large urban areas have real price competition.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If they didn't get suckered into one of those like exclusivity deals.
Right. And even within major urban areas, like take New York, I suspect, I don't know, we'd have to look, but I suspect even pockets of New York don't have lots of price competition.
Oh, no problem. No, I've actually, the readers on the blog complain about that.
Yeah.
Like with Verizon actually did bring a lot of competition to the area.
Sure.
But it's only, I think they only picked up like 3 million households out of New York.
Which is a huge number. But
it is, but I mean, you're talking.
The greater New York area, like just in the boroughs, it's like 10 million people.
Right.
And the greater New York area is something
bigger,
like 20 million.
Right. So, I mean, however that shakes out to households, who knows? But it's like 3 million is probably just like a small, like maybe 30% of it, if that. So, yeah. And this is just, again, might as well. It's not quite a lie.
No, but it is certainly a lie of omission.
It is, and it's really just getting it's PR based off of data that was taken 3 years ago and applying it to and using old standards to basically justify that you have price competition.
Yeah, like if you compare me to the average height of a man from 1776, I'm a giant at 5'11", right? Like I tower over most people.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of saying, if you make, say you make 60 grand a year.
Yeah.
It's like saying that you're rich because
we compared you to a 1950s standard.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah. Have you ever gone to Williamsburg, Colonial Williamsburg, and tried to walk into those little itty bitty houses they have? It'll crush your face.
Okay, so now we're on to we got a lot of FCC information this week, and it's not it's Title II net neutrality related, adjacent.
Yeah, adjacent.
But it's really just more of like Ajit Pai is kind of like a bungling idiot, it seems, like this week.
Yeah,
for the most part. First, do you remember when John Oliver on his last week tonight,
go FCC yourself or whatever?
Exactly. He basically put together a segment on net neutrality, and we talked about this.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah, there's an episode. You'd have to kind of roll back, but it's called
it was like 2 months ago.
Yeah, it's like cyber attack at the FCC, I think it's called, or something along those lines, where we kind of get into this. But the whole John Oliver basically told people to go out and comment on the FCC's website. Lo and behold, that evening, the sites went down. The FCC comment site went down. And they came out the next morning and said that they faced a cyber attack. And that's what took it down, not all of the comments coming into the FCC. So it's like a tech web news site, Gizmodo.
Yeah.
Basically filed a Freedom of Information Act with the FCC. And they asked them for all kinds of, because they basically said there was analysis to show that they were under a denial of service attack. And so they said they wanted, they basically
want to see the analysis.
The FOIA request for the analysis. They asked for emails about the incident between Pai and some underlings. They asked for logs, and basically they they responded, and they sent him like a couple of emails and basically said that they can't share any, or that there wasn't any written documentation of the analysis.
So the analysis was someone licking their finger and sticking it up in the air? Or it was someone saying, boy, wouldn't it be convenient to say this was a cyber attack rather than all the people that hate our idea brought our site down.
Yeah. And the funny part is like Gizmodo, like they really did elaborate on what it meant by requesting records related to the attack. Because they said, and this is the quote, it says, Gizmodo seeks all responsive records regardless of format, medium, or physical characteristics. In conducting your search, please understand the terms records, communications, and documents in their broadest sense to include any written, typed, recorded, graphic, printed, or audio material of any kind. We seek records of any kind, including electronic records, audio tapes, videotapes, and photographs, as well as letters, emails, facsimiles, telephone messages, voicemail messages, transcripts, notes, or minutes of any meetings, telephone conversations, or discussions. Our requests include any attachments to these records. No category of material should be omitted from search, collection, and production. Now, for people out there who are saying that's crazy, I've actually worked in government.
No, that's actually...
You have to keep everything.
So I don't know if you even know this, but I was a records administrator
for
like
NARA.
What's that?
At NARA?
No.
Okay.
State Department. But I worked with NARA. Like I actually set up one of
the National Archives.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
National
It was
Archives,
my fault. I said NARA first.
Yeah, National Archives Records Administration.
Right.
Is what NARA stands for. And like, so at State Department, I did this kind of work, and what they are supposed to have done is meta tagged everything that's related to that cyber attack. And I believe, I don't remember, so there are these things called a schedule, right? Like a records retention schedule, which basically says, like, this is this type of content. We have to keep it for X number of years, right? And I think the default is typically a year, right? And then anything that's considered, and I actually love the way they phrased all that.
Oh, yeah.
Because the term responsive is actually a legal term of art, right? Like it means anything that could be deemed like reasonably to be part of this discussion is what they are requesting.
Right. And the funny part about it,
they even call out all the types of content. I'm sorry, go ahead.
They did, well, because they didn't want because they know. I mean, they know the games that they would play. But they essentially, the FCC responded with a few emails when they asked for all that. Now, there are server logs and everything else. And when they were kind of asked about these server logs, they basically said that it would be violating, it could possibly violate personal information.
No.
They also brought up trade secrets. And then Gizmodo was like, fine, give us the logs and redact all the IP addresses. And they wouldn't, they didn't even do that. And that right there, because here's the thing. I'm curious to see, Because if the services went down,
Right.
I'm curious to see what time they went down and why they went down. And if you redact all the IP addresses from the server logs,
You can still tell that.
you can still see that.
Yep.
You can see when did it come down. You can also see if it was a graceful shutdown, which
Right.
means that somebody actually went in and shut it down,
Right.
or if it was a
Or
crash.
if it's seized up.
And if it's seized up, okay, maybe it couldn't handle it. But like, what if something nefarious happened?
Right.
What if they just went in and turned it off?
Right. And honestly, like you would see that very easily because basically all of your standard services would go and shut down in sequence, and you'd be able to say, okay, that looks just like every time they shut down a server.
Exactly. And that's why I want to see this data.
Of
'cause
course.
Now I'm curious. Before I wasn't even suspecting that. Because, why would you? I'm not going to, I don't think Ajit Pai is a bad person. I don't think that people working at the FCC are bad people.
No.
I think they have ideology different than mine.
But if you start doing things like not responding to a FOIA request, again, Freedom of Information Act
Right.
request,
Why are they not just providing the information like they're supposed to?
like that, what's frustrating about that is FOIA basically, to sum it up, crystallizes the concept in legal language that the information that the government captures in its daily business is ours as the citizenry.
Right.
So we have a right to see it whenever the hell we want. And, the government has to present it. And if they don't, they can be brought to court over it. So yeah, wow, that's really interesting.
That's really kind of what really raised one of my eyebrows. I'm just kind of like,
Like, why would you? I mean, again, in DC, the old saying is, "It's not the act, it's the cover up," right? Like, why would you not share that information? If that's what it was, why would you just not give the information over?
Right, because if it's truly a DDoS attack, or if it's even truly like some type of technical issue,
Yeah,
then
that's fine.
Fine.
Those things, for God's sake, both of us work in IT. Technical issues happen
They
all
do.
the time.
They happen. I mean, and sure, somebody might be to blame or whatever, but
But
that's
that's
not.
totally different.
And
Than
it's beside the
malicious.
point. It's just like if you show us that, then at least we know everything from like a policy standpoint is on the up and up.
right.
And what's really shameful is Ajit Pai pretty much pushed the fact that he was going to be transparent and open in all his processes. You can't go in front of the press saying that a federal agency was cyber attacked, and then when asked for any type of evidence of it, say you didn't write anything down.
Yeah, I mean, because
Like you didn't. We didn't. They said there was analysis. Where's that? Where's that?
Right.
Where is the analysis?
Because what's really common, when a large institution is attacked, people tend not to document it, right? Like that. That's what we're to believe.
Yeah, I guess not. I guess they're
Right.
like, oh,
Why
some
would
stuff
you? Why
happened.
would you write that down? Like, oh, what's the big deal? Like, it's just our primary way of getting response from, I don't know, the populace, which is supposed to be able to respond.
One day
went down.
One day, okay. One day, my host provider for my website got a false positive, which is basically saying they detected some funny business on my site. And I spend a good 2 hours going over logs and basically matching up data to see if I could figure out like what was going on. They came back and said that it was a false positive and there was really no issue at all.
Right.
But
they could provide you the logs.
But that jived. I mean, but that jived with what I was seeing. But the fact is I spent 2 hours. I had like 18 files of logs. I'm cross-referencing that with other data I have.
Yep.
And I'm one person who runs one website. This is the FCC. I'm sure there is something.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. The idea that they would only provide a couple emails.
So that's like the first kind of FCC offense
Yeah.
this week. They also got sued.
Yeah, and this was really interesting.
And they this actually kind of goes into the last story because they did get sued over the FOIA request
Yep.
that Gizmodo filed. But they were also sued by it's something called American Oversight, which is like a legal watchdog group. And they're trying to like look for conflicts of interest within government is kind of what their play is. And they put a lawsuit out last Tuesday for the FCC to failing to comply with multiple Freedom of Information Acts. This one has to do with the evidence that Ajit Pai is putting forward in justification for his move to strike Wheeler's open internet rules. So net neutrality. So basically they want to, the FOIA request was put in to say, let me see the reasoning and evidence for your justification for overturning net neutrality.
So are we playing let's make Joel feel self-righteous? Right? Like, because a couple episodes ago, 2 or 3, I was saying that, like, I would love to see the analysis that Chairman Pai is using to back up his assertion that investment will or has been curtailed by net neutrality rules.
Right.
Like, and I could tell you why he hasn't put it out. It's because it doesn't fucking exist.
Well, he does. Okay.
There's a study.
Well, there's one. And okay, to be fair, and actually I started talking to this guy on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like Hal Singer. One of his studies is his.
Right.
And what he did, to be fair to Hal Singer, he's an economist. He feels as though, like, I think based off our conversations, he seems to support rules against blocking and throttling. He doesn't seem to support rules against fast lanes.
Okay.
And I think that's just the economist in him that feels as though, because he doesn't want
see the argument there.
His big, I think, and this is, I'm speaking for him. This might be wrong, and he can correct it. I mean, if you ask him, he's really responsive on Twitter. He doesn't feel, if you say that there can't be a fast lane, then you've set the price competition at 0 for any type of prioritization, to which I am like, you don't really need, no edge provider is asking for prioritization. This is a complete supply side thing. Like ISPs are the ones saying that there needs to be prioritization. I don't know of any edge provider that says if you have a real-time service, you kind of just beef up all of the delay from the way the internet works. All of that delay is going to be between them and their connection to the backbone.
Yeah. So, like, to be more specific, like if there was a delay between, let's say, Netflix, that's the one we always use, right?
Right.
And their customer, it would be attributed to really the delay between Netflix, the internet, and then the internet to the customer, right? It's the connection between Netflix and the internet, and the internet's and the customer's connection to the internet.
Well, it's really, because basically this is how it works. And the edge provider kind of really clouds it, because in the end, everyone's kind of an end user of the internet. But Netflix basically has what's called a peering connection, to where they get if a customer is big enough, they actually will pay to get a direct connect to the backbone.
I've been in a couple of different companies where I've seen that sort of thing.
Right. That really kind of eliminates any need
Yeah.
for prioritization.
You're moving as fast as the internet does. Period.
Yes. And you're paying for the bandwidth. It's not like my content is more important and I'm getting paid and this will get sorted before that. It's like I have this much bandwidth and this much pipe, and I just kind of, if you're running slow or stuff is lagging, you buy more bandwidth.
To me, I don't see it any different as like buying more electricity, right? Like if you consume more electricity to provide whatever service it is to like your end customers, then you just buy more electricity
from a
the
capacity
utility
standpoint.
company.
Yeah. Not like you're
the
not
grid
buying,
has more than enough electricity.
Right, you're not buying bits. You're buying like pipe. To use a primitive analogy, you're buying bandwidth. It's like how much what's my max that I can pump through at one time.
And again, like at some point you're just buying what the internet can provide.
Right.
Like so there is an upward bound, but the upward bound is the upward bound of whatever your fast lanes.
And for an economics argument, that upward bound is, usually grows when there's more demand.
Yeah.
So
the internet itself gets bigger.
Exactly. Right? So when more people use more services like Netflix, like websites, like blogs, like whatever, any type of app that's out there, the more demand there is for that, then the more of those edge providers are going to be buying bandwidth from their host.
So I get what this economist is saying. I just don't buy it.
I disagree. I disagree that there's any demand for prioritization.
But I don't think he's disingenuous.
No, not at all. I don't. That's what I get from talking to him. Is I think that's kind of where he is. Because as a matter of fact, he actually kind of spoke out against moving the thing over to the FTC. Right. He doesn't agree with that. I think. And I'm speaking for him, so don't take my word for it. From my understanding is he's more for a legislative solution.
Yeah,
and standards.
Again, I've actually pushed for. I've said it on the podcast,
right?
Which is as close as I have to pushing, right? Like I think that would Senator Thune's, suggestion of posing an law. I think is the best way to go. I would be for that if we didn't have a situation right now where they're trying to like completely hijack the way a bill becomes a law. Because
I watched Conjunction Junction.
Yeah.
What's your function? What's that called? Schoolhouse Rock. I watched Schoolhouse Rock. I've heard the Bill song. What they're doing right now is not following what the Bill taught me.
No,
it's not.
It's not.
It's different.
No.
It's not the same.
Nope.
So,
no, I hear you.
I'm losing faith in our system, and I don't really know if the current the way laws are being handled right now just doesn't seem to get at what the people need.
All right, so I think we can all agree, no matter what our walk of life or political leanings and so on, is that Congress collectively is the worst of us.
Oh, they are. They're terrible.
They're cowardly, terrible human beings that if I could, I would float them out on an island.
Yeah.
But,
and I would complain almost as much if the Democrats were in control.
Oh, yeah.
I just didn't see the shenanigans that are happening right now, though, are just completely beyond the pale.
I honestly think what it comes down to is that the Democratic congressional leadership is not as clever. Right.
Honestly, yeah. Well, they're definitely not as ballsy.
Yeah, they're certainly nowhere near. Like, again, Mitch McConnell's Dormammu.
Mitch McConnell gives no fucks.
He does. He's completely out of fucks to give. Like, he really does not give a shit what anyone thinks of him.
So, that's where we are. If you enjoy that kind of thing, then you got the right guy in there.
But so anyways, that's the argument. So the basic argument about like a legislative solution makes total sense to me. Dennis's point, though,
in normal times.
Yeah, if I can paraphrase is, again, paraphrasing is Congress is a bunch of fuckers. And because of that, we can't have a legislative solution.
That's exactly what my point. Yes, they're a bunch of fuckers.
Yeah.
So then Pai was asked in Congress, and this is by I think Congressman Doyle of I want to say Pennsylvania. I hope that's right. He basically kind of posed the question, what, and it was over the comments to the website. Like, what would need to be shown for him to reconsider his net neutrality action?
Totally legitimate. Because to date, before you get to his response, to date, no, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe no rule posed by any federal agency in the history of the Republic has received as many comments.
That's about right from what I know. Because it was like 12. It's like right now it stands like 12 million, I think.
Yeah,
roughly.
I mean 12 million. Now, granted,
a lot of those there's a bunch of bots.
But I mean, like, let's be straight. It's about 2 million of them that are bots, from what anyone can tell. And that means, that's 10 million, which still dwarfs public comment.
Yeah, and we went over the polls last week that shows that there's bipartisan support amongst the public to keep these rules in place.
Which, again, you can't get anyone to agree on
in
anything.
this day and age, right now, in this climate, this is the one thing that pretty much anyone agrees on.
This is as close to hands across America as we're going to get.
Right. This might be the starting point to our future, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I really don't think there's a lot of common ground out there right now.
But like, hey, let information flow freely. We can all kind of agree. Like, basically, all we're all saying with this is let all of the bullshit bounce around and we'll sort it out.
Right.
Which is a very free market solution. So one would think that the party of free markets and small government would kind of back that type of thing.
I would think that too. But, I mean, just quick aside, the skinny repeal will repeal the individual mandate, which will essentially, and the CBO scored this, will eventually blow up the individual private market, because
you mean the
for
Republican,
healthcare,
the Republican plan that was mimicked out of Massachusetts that became what we now colloquially call Obamacare.
Right.
It'll blow that thing up. Oh yeah,
because that's the thing is, like, they started with this whole, like, okay, let's get rid of Medicaid, and no one liked that. So they're like, well, let's just repeal the individual mandate now. Now, the effect that will have is 15 to 16 million people will drop insurance because premiums will go up so high, because if there's no mandate,
you just don't have the money.
Well, if there's no mandate, the risk pools go up because all the healthy people aren't going to buy insurance. And so now they're okay with destroying the private part of the market.
Yeah. I mean, again,
I don't know anymore. Up is down. Up is down.
Black is white. Dogs are laying down with cats.
It's crazy.
Makes no sense.
It's crazy.
And like, what you're doing is you're just waiting for the vein on my head to go down, and then just going, let's poke the bear.
The Republicans are fine with Medicaid. They just want to destroy the private market now, I guess.
It's fucking
I don't understand.
lunacy.
I don't understand. Someone help.
It's seriously, write in. Someone explain it. I don't get it.
Yeah. And it's really, because to me, it's all like nothing makes sense anywhere right now.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. No, I mean, totally, like, all logic and reason has just bailed. And, this is again why something like Gizmodo's Freedom of Information Act request is so important, because it's like, hey, what did you base that on? And then someone goes, I don't know. What's that over there? And that's like their fucking response.
Right.
Like, and then, I don't know how you deal with that.
Yeah, well, that's what Doyle asked, what comment would change your mind?
Yeah.
And Pai said, economic analysis that shows credibility that there's infrastructure investment that has increased dramatically. What? So he just did like a little fancy two-step, because his whole argument against net neutrality was that it's hurting economic investment.
Right.
Net neutrality wasn't put in place to spark economic investment.
Right.
It was put in place to ensure that there is free flow of content throughout the internet without
Right.
it being throttled and blocked
Well, and
by
to-
gatekeepers.
Right, and to provide price competition, right? Which it does, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, they don't even, they're not regulating prices. They're not.
no. Let me clarify. Price competition comes as a byproduct, right? Like, it comes as a byproduct at the endpoint. So, like, because everyone's content moves freely, it means that the ISPs can't pick the winners and losers between their own custom content providing and
Yes,
networks.
if they own something,
Right, like,
it's
or
fair on the edge.
Amazon
It's
or
fair on the
whatever.
edge.
Exactly.
Right. That's what we're talking about. Not the ISP access, like not access to the internet,
No.
but services that are on the internet. There's
Right.
competition there because ISPs can use their position to leverage their own products.
Yeah, and of course they would.
And they have.
Right.
So Pai's response saying that you need to show economic analysis that shows that there's been a boon in investment because of net neutrality is nonsense.
Well, it's not only nonsense.
Because it's the argument he put forward is he wants to overturn it because it's hurting investment.
Well,
He's doing the inverse. He's switching it, making his argument the reasoning for it being put in place in the first.
Yeah,
which is untrue.
It's judo.
It
right?
is.
Yeah. It's also like it begs the question, right?
It
like,
does.
Is investment, like dramatic investment, required right now? Like, is the internet itself big enough to where we don't need dramatic investment?
Well,
right?
I mean, you could say that. You could also say that there really hasn't been any discernible change in investment,
Right.
which I think is true based off of the data I've seen.
Well, what we looked at the other day was that from the financial statements from, I think it was Verizon and AT&T, we looked at on the podcast.
Yeah.
It was what, 5-6% in capital expenditures into their network every year,
Right.
year over year.
What happened? Yeah, because that was actually based off how singers work. And really
Sounds awesome to me. I mean, that's
but a lot of it came. See, he pulled out stuff because, and legitimately so. Like AT&T, there was some numbers on Mexican broadband there.
right. It was an acquisition. Wasn't
Yeah, there was also some other stuff that we pulled out, but really the whole crux of the argument, a lot of the losses over those past years that he points out are from two companies, AT&T
Right.
and Sprint. Funny thing though, this week or last week actually, all of the major, like a lot. Well, at least two of the major, I think Verizon did as well, and they were flat on investment.
Mhm.
But Comcast earnings they had their earnings call last week, and capital expenditures for the first 6 months of 2017 are up 6% over the first 6%.
And so that's my point when I say dramatic increase, right? Like, you don't need over time, certainly on infrastructure spending, you don't need a 20-30% bump in
That doesn't happen.
Year.
That just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. Why would
it happened? Maybe it happened in during the .com
in the
boom.
very beginning.
In the very
right?
beginning.
Like, imagine roads,
Right.
When there are no roads
Yeah.
at all, you build a shit ton in the beginning.
Right, and that's what happened. Now
after that, you build a little bit all the time, and you're constantly repairing.
And that's kind of how the internet has been going.
Right.
Well,
because it's a utility.
Capital expense. Yeah, it went up. Comcast did 6%. AT&T. Remember the one? That's the one that Hal Singer kind of like that because there was like a $3 billion divestiture.
Yeah.
From capital expenditures through AT&T. 10%. It went up 10% because they're coming back.
It normalized, right?
Yes.
Like
it's normalizing. 10% year first 6 months.
Again, that's mean reversion, right? Like, so that's exactly what he should expect. Meaning, what was the economist's name?
Hausinger.
Should expect, right? Like, they are much like their competitors, going to over the long term be plowing in 5%, 6%,
Right.
something like that into their infrastructure spending, because what do they want to earn as an equity over a long period of time? 6, 7%, right? Like,
Yep.
that's that is generally considered like the market return. I know we, in the heady days of like 2004 and 1998, we thought 10% was what an equity returned, but generally speaking, they returned somewhere in their neighborhood of 6 to 7.5, 8%.
Yeah, but that's your profit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But this is what we're talking about: expenditure.
Well, and that's my
on
point,
infrastructure.
is that when you plow that much into infrastructure so that you can
Right.
in the future draw down that much in earnings.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, we have like the number 1 and number 2. Actually, I'm sorry. The number 1 and the number 3 provider had huge gains in capital expenditures, 16 to 17. Now, the big argument that Pai is showing is over the years from 14 to 16, capital expenditures in broadband went down, I think, 4%, so 2% per year. Which, honestly, if you do the math, is
What
complete.
year was that?
14 to 16.
Okay.
If you do the math on that, that is completely within I think it's like in a standard it's less than a standard deviation in capital expenditures for broadband.
So he's doing his analysis based off 2 years?
2 years and pretty much insignificant change.
That's idiotic.
It is. But the point here is, if you want to play by his rules on, small periods of time, like small data points over time, the first 2 quarters of 17 are going off like gangbusters right now,
Right.
for some big providers. Now, to be on to be complete, Charter and Verizon, who, to be honest, have been struggling against Comcast and AT&T. Verizon's flat on capital expenditure, and Charter took a bit of a downturn, but are like very, very optimistic about the rest of 17.
Well, and honestly, what you would really do is aggregate the overall market, right? And look at capital expenditure there.
Yes.
Now, the reason why I like the way you're doing this, where you're looking at the individual companies, is that like there's been a lot of bullshit floated by the varying lobbyist groups that say, oh, the industry is losing, such and such. And like, if you go look at their actual financial statements, it's just not the case.
Oh, well, that's the funny part on the earnings call, which the earnings call is, you're not going to bullshit on an earnings call.
No.
Because anything you say, any check you write, you're going to have to cash at some point.
Yeah. If you say, oh my God, we're losing money hand over fist in an effort to sway the regulators, well, guess what? You're going to get punched in the pocketbook a lot harder by the market.
Yes. And you're not going to sit there and just say everything's like sunshine and rainbows, because you want to set expectations.
Yeah, if you don't hit your earnings, then you get punished again by the market.
Right. So the best thing to do on the earnings call, which almost every legitimate company does, is tell the fucking truth.
Yeah, you call it as straight as you can.
You are never going to get more truth out of a company than on their earnings call.
Yeah.
And they never, ever say anything about Title II on their earnings calls. They were asked before, and they've actually said statements such as, we don't really think that it's going to affect our market that much. Yeah, Comcast and Verizon are actually on the record saying that, you know what, Title II, more of a, I think a bigger deal was made of this than needed to be. It's kind of what was said in essence.
Yeah, because the bottom line is they're going to get paid. Right, like,
well, the Title II thing is, the thing about it is we're not really talking about any major rules and regulations. It's basically the open internet order, which is no throttling, no blocking, no fast lanes. The thing that worries them, the reason why they're trying to kill this so hard, is because it does give the FCC the power to do things down the road.
Sure.
But those things would come under some sort of process where it gets debated in a public forum.
Well, and those hypothetical things, right, can also be brought to court.
Exactly.
Right? It's not like the ISPs historically have been shy about going to court.
No.
They just got out of court.
As a matter of fact, they probably shot
2014.
themselves in the foot going to court because we already had open internet rules back in 2010 that they sued over.
Yeah.
And the reason why we have Title II now is because the court said that was the only way we could do this.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, to me...
And I say we because I really do mean we.
Yeah.
As in we the people of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, Chairman Pai is just being disingenuous. And, like, I'm really impressed that people are trying to like hold him and the rest of the FCC to account with like the Freedom of Information Acts. Like, was it a senator who was asking these questions?
Doyle
directly?
from Pennsylvania. Yeah.
I mean,
good question. I mean,
it's a great question. Like, it's a very simple, direct question.
But you don't see that these days.
No. And the chairman's response is telling, right? Like it tells you basically he's got something. He's got a single criteria in his mind, and investment spending is the only thing that matters. And so if you go and you play by that game and you look at the numbers, things don't look bad right now.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is even if we want to go by his dubious argument, that doesn't even hold water.
No.
I think if we, go into any more, Joel's going to have an aneurysm. So I think it's time for us to, wrap it up. So if you're digging the show, please subscribe. We're going to start asking at the beginning.
Because at this point, people are tired.
If you've hung in there this long, you've probably
subscribed.
Yeah. You know the shebang. Review us on iTunes. Say some kind words, 5 stars. We'd love that. You hate the show. Why are you torturing yourself? We have a Facebook page you can check out. If you have some questions about anything we discuss on the podcast or cord cutting, feel free to leave them there. Follow us on Twitter at Grounded Reason. You can send us an email. The email address is podcast@groundedreason.com. What else do we want?
There's always the blog.
There is the blog, groundedreason.com, which is, doing quite well at the moment.
Yeah, there's all sorts of guides for how to cut the cord and other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the policy, I try to keep the blog fairly policy-free.
It creeps in occasionally.
Occasionally on the blog it does. A lot of, I try to save that for the podcast. But what else? Oh, Joel and I are going to go to Podfest.
Yes, we are.
In LA. We're not going to be doing a show, though. But if you're going to Podfest,
say hello.
Say hey. Like, follow us on Twitter. Send me a tweet, saying, hey, we're going to be in Podfest. Joel and I will be hanging out, watching shows. I know we'll definitely be checking out the Dollop.
Oh, yeah.
Love it or leave it.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of workshops we'll probably be going to on, more on the podcasting side of things. But there's a bar in the hotel, so...
That's always good.
So, if you want to hang out, let us know if you're going to be there. Thanks for listening to Grounded Reason, where policy... Oh, shit, I fucked that up.
That's the best closing we've ever had.
What's the show called again?
Grounded Reason, where stuff happens.
It's only week 2. So.
It's all understood.
Thanks for listening to Grounded Reason, where we shit on Ajit Pai on a weekly basis.
Yeah. He deserves it.
This is Dennis Rostaro.
And this is Joel Reeves.
Take care, everybody.
Dude.